Hi, I'm Hank Parker. You know, I've had tremendous success with Come Here Deer over the years. It's an incredible product, but there are a lot of other products out there that make claims that I don't think have validity. I test and I look what our product does versus other people, but I want an objective that is an absolute fact. Let's go draw factual data to draw a conclusion. So we hired whitetail expert Wade Nolan to work with a major university with collared deer. According to whitetail experts, a whitetail deer spends 95% of his time in his home range. And 50% of that time is spent right in the middle of his core area. Each one of our deer in this test have a GPS collar that feeds back the data every hour so you can monitor every second of where that deer moves and what he does. So we can drop all the speculation and find the facts. So the ball's in Wade's court, let's see what he finds.
Hey y'all, here we are in Texas. Texas has more whitetails than any state. So we tracked this 3.5-year-old buck for 2 weeks and set up his home range in his core area. He had a lot of fidelity to this area, met all of his needs. Here's his home range, and his home range is pretty large. And then his core area is right here. It's above our attraction site and also a little core area over here to the west of our attraction site. But our goal was to move him down adjacent to this lake. A little lake right there, you can see the dam on it. Our goal is to move this deer's core area this direction. And to do that, he's actually well on the other side of that lake. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna set up supplemental feed site that is sweet enough to draw him here. So here's what I'm gonna do first. This is a bale of alfalfa. It's a compressed bale. I'm gonna uncompress it a bit and I'm gonna sweeten it up. You can use our honey. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pour it on slowly and soak this bale. This will really get their attention because we're gonna try to entice them to include this now in his core area. Here's what else I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take and I'm gonna put some shell corn here. We're gonna set the shell corn right here alongside. We're gonna put 50 pounds here and 50 pounds right over here, making a hot spot here, okay? The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add some flavor to this corn. So I'm gonna put some corn coat on the corn. Also on this corn. Final thing I'm gonna do is put some extreme powder on this log, and they will eat virtually anything I put this powder on so that the other deer, because there may be more than one deer here at once, the camera will tell us, they'll have something to do while the other deer are eating the corn and the alfalfa. So here's what happened. 2 weeks later, he has readjusted his core area to be right here. He actually split it. There's another little piece of a core area down here, but we moved him down right lakeside. We brought him down and made a lakeside buck out of him, and we got some great photography. In the daytime, this is a mature buck. Right here, he stood in front of the camera. So this buck actually shifted his home range down near the lake and munched on our attraction site. So here's Texas lakeside buck before and after.
Hey, in just 2 weeks, we've moved this deer's core area in Texas, and you know they're very acclimated to corn in Texas. So Come Here Deer in 2 weeks have moved this deer. Hey, Wade's in Pennsylvania, a whole different terrain. Let's see if he can move this deer.
This is Pennsylvania. Let's take a look at the landowners here. So this buck that we're tracking, we have 2 weeks of GPS data on him, and here's what we found out. After 2 weeks, here is his home range outlined here in yellow. Look at his home range. Way out here in these woods. The creek's only 20 yards away. This is a real likely corridor for these deer to be moving through. Right in this bottom, I'm gonna take and put up a Hold'em honey bale right here. So I'm gonna sweeten up this corn, some corn coat. And then there's a pile behind me. I want to sweeten it up, and I want to also just mix it in a little so it's not too concentrated. Ooh, you can really smell that. Okay, and now I'm going to do this one, and we're done. Here we go. Good sight. After 2 weeks of time, look what happened to his home range. It has expanded to the east and to the south, and now this buck, this is the 95% where he spends his time in the home range. We have now moved him down here adjacent to this property. Now he's spending 95% of his time. We're in that zone, and better yet, we did a proximity study, and we found that there's a 75% increase now around within 100 yards circle around this attraction site than there was before. We relocated a very mature buck. Here's what happened on the Steeler fan buck before and after.
Hey, you know, the way Khmer deer's built, it has no geographical boundaries. So it worked in Texas, now it's worked in Pennsylvania. Now Wade's in Missouri, and this is a whole different set of circumstances. We've got a deer that they're following him every day with his GPS collar, and he's skirting this one farm. He's all around it on neighbor's land, but he's not coming onto this farm. Is there a way you can use Khmer deer to bring that deer from the land on the neighbor side over to your side of the property? Is it possible?
Look at this Missouri farmland. Look at all these different farms. Now this is a 2.5-year-old buck, and I'm going to lay his GPS home range over top of these farms. Here it is, and look what we have here. This buck has an area that he is living in that transects maybe 6 different farms. Here is his core area, and his core area is broken up. It's kind of unique. You ever wonder about a buck staying in the middle of a field? There's one of his core areas right there in a little hummock in the middle of a field. Here's what we did. We added 2 attraction sites to the north here, well outside of his home range, and one here just outside of his core area in an attempt to move him north. Here's what we've got here. This is one of our alfalfa honey bales. Here's some Hold'em honey. It's a sweet breakfast treat for him. Love these deer. Take care of them. This American holly, and juice it up. And let me tell you something about holly. Deer don't eat holly. I think they're gonna eat this. They eat anything we put this on. There you have it. Let's see if we can shift a core area or a home range. Let's see what happened in 2 weeks. Look at this shift. He actually shifted his core area to include this attraction site, 324 yards, and these attraction sites, which are now within his home range, 536 yards. We moved this buck on purpose. Here's what happened. Here's before, here's after. So why does that matter to you? What if this here is your farm? That's gonna work.
Pretty impressive. Way to go, Wade. Khmer deer brought that deer across the property line and put him at your bow stand. Hey, Wade is in Ohio, land of the giants, man, where the big bucks live, trying to see if he can make it work in Ohio like he has in Texas and Pennsylvania and Missouri.
Here we are in southern Ohio. These farms are unusually shaped because there's a lot of contour here. This is hill country. So we overlaid a 4.5-year-old mature buck's home range over this country. Look how many farms it intersects. And our goal was to take and move him to the east with these 2 attraction sites in areas that we chose, and up here into a whole new set of woods with an attraction site here to the northeast. Just over here, there's been some big deer here. Look at the size of that thing. It's a nice shed. What we're doing is we put out just 100 pounds of corn, and we're gonna put some corn coat on it. What you wanna do is season it with this. What we're trying to do is not just draw him over here, but shorten the time it'll take to get him to adopt this as part of his home range. That's our goal. We don't know what the result will be. Let's see what happened in 2 weeks. Here you go. Success. He moved his home range way up here, to rubber banded it to the north and picked up our attraction site. But even better yet, he moved his core area over here to pick up 2 of our bait sites. This buck, a mature buck, is now vulnerable. He's right where we want him. So here's what happened, before and after.
Well, we've had tremendous success moving these big mature bucks. Can we move a doe? Can we make a doe do what you need to do for when that rut comes in, that big buck's following her? Can you move a doe? That's going to be a test for Wade to check out.
So here we are in Georgia. This is a 3.5-year-old doe. We call her Big Mama. And she's raised 2 sets of fawns within her home range. Now, these aren't peach trees. These are actually hardwoods, and a lot of these are pine plantations. Let's see what our home range looked like. Look at it over here. Pretty large and a double core area. So here's what we did. We set up a couple different attraction sites to see what would happen. One here in her home range, one outside of her home range, and one way outside of her home range over here, almost a 1/4 mile away. Gave it 2 weeks, and she shifted her home range to include these 2 new attraction sites that we set up. But these 3 sites actually all have the same odor, and one day the wind blew from this direction, she picked it up, and she moved all the way over here, 1,245 yards, and set up a secondary home range around this site. Odor matters. So here are the results, before and after.
A doe's probably harder to move than a buck. Most doe live and die within a square mile. He moved this doe a long way. She loved this stuff. It is amazing what you can do with Khmer deer. So every state worked with the bucks, all the collared bucks performed, and we moved a doe's core area. That is impressive. Boy, I've had some super success hunting big bucks in Louisiana, but what a challenge it is. You deal with water, you deal with unbelievable mosquitoes, all kinds of things that, variables that you don't deal with in other places. So Louisiana is a challenge. We've got a 6.5-year-old collared buck there. We want to move his core area. Can it be done in Louisiana?
So here we are in gumbo country, Louisiana. This is a 6.5-year-old buck. I call him the geezer. And let's turn it around a little bit and imagine that this here is the farm that you own. And it extends down here like that. And you've been hearing stories about a really big buck who's been seen around this area, but you don't really see him on your place. Well, let's lay the home range of this buck over this map and see where he's spending 95% of his time. Holy mackerel, he's missing your farm. So let's set an attraction site up right there and wait 2 weeks. The buck we're trying to influence lives, we know his core area is over a 1/4 mile that way. It's a big tangle down there. And what we want to do is we want to move him this way, across this paved road. Now, you might want to pray for him. There's quite a bit of traffic here, but the idea is we want to shift his core area all the way out to the edge and beyond the edge of his home range and see if we can get him over here onto our property. Let's see what happens. Look at that. Now this buck has shifted his home range onto your property. He's spending 95% of his time inside of this yellow line, and he's now spending time right here on your property. We did a proximity study, and he's also spending 75% more time around a 100-yard circle around this attraction site. Now this 6.5-year-old buck that everyone's talking about, he's on this farm. So here he is before, and here's the old geezer after.
It can be done in Louisiana. He moved this 6.5-year-old deer's core area. Khmer deer is incredible. I've known that, and now we're seeing it from a factual standpoint. It's been a lot of work collecting all this data, and it is proven out to be so incredible that it even surprises me on some of the results to be able to move all these deer with no geographical boundaries. It works as well in Texas as it does in Louisiana or Pennsylvania or Missouri or Georgia or wherever you are. It is an incredible product, and used right, Khmer deer can put that deer right where you want him.